I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking all about mental health. When you're on the fertility journey, there you could be feeling all sorts of emotions. Your mental health may be impacted, and whether you're feeling depression or anxiety, or maybe you have actually been dealing with depression or anxiety your whole life. Maybe you are on medication for that. So we're talking today about looking at the whole body and why it's really important to address your mood and why that can be a clue as to why you're struggling to conceive. Excited for you to listen to today's episode. We're looking at mental health completely differently. Let's go. Hey, Dr. Achina, excited to have you on the podcast.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So if you could share with us really how you came to do this work. Most people have a story of kind of how they came to find functional medicine.
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah, most functional medicine providers absolutely have a story behind it because I was a conventional doctor for 20 years. And I'm going to say 12, 13, because I always have to count now because we lost 2 years due to the pandemic. So it's like about 13 years ago. I was going to say 10, but it's about 13 years ago that my son had a mental health crisis. And here I am, a psychiatrist, right? And he had a mental health crisis, acute mental health crisis of severe depression and suicidality to the point of suddenly being on a fifth floor ledge, ready to jump. And that was like an overnight thing, was not predictable, did not see coming. And as a psychiatrist, you would think that I would see something like that coming. So yeah, it was really out of the blue, totally blindsided me. And so we were at the time traveling. We had taken the kids out of school and homeschooled them while we were traveling, and they were enjoying it. So it wasn't like it had to do with necessarily an adjustment and changes in that way. The only thing was that he was missing his friends, which was understandable, but not to the point where he would, want to kill himself over it, right? So anyway, yeah. So when we got home, we took him to a psychiatrist and had the whole evaluation, and he was seeing a therapist, and I was started on medication, and he was a little bit better, but then had anxiety, so he was starting on a second medication, and then he wasn't sleeping at night, so he was starting another medication, and then he was suddenly given a diagnosis of ADD, so a fourth medication, and this guy was, better, but not the same. Definitely not the same. And he was kind of like a zombie. So it was really a crisis in faith in the system. Like this system is not working and nobody was answering my questions, kind of getting the runaround, went to multiple doctors and it was the same thing. Well, it's your genetics, both sides of your family have depression, be happy that 1 out of 3 of your kids, only 1 out of 3 of your kids has this issue and it's kind of got to suck it up. And it's like, nope, not going to do that. So, I hit the books and found other people who could help me and happened to be in the functional medicine field. I hadn't known about functional medicine at the time. And long story short, found him to have celiac disease. He
Oh,
was nutritionally malnourished. And the genes that he got for celiac disease, one for me and one for my husband.
oh,
Neither one of us have celiac disease, but his aunt has celiac disease. So, and his mother probably has celiac disease as well, but she refuses to get tested anyway, because she refuses to give up her donuts and things like that. So, or change her diet. But, that's, everybody has their choices. But it really affected his mood to the degree, and this is something that has been going on for years, and it came to fruition because he hit puberty.
yes.
And so puberty is a remodeling of the body that really requires a huge amount of energy, and your immune system is really challenged at the time. So whatever happened that tipped the balance, and that absolutely caused him to have an explosion of his immune system that then also affected his brain. And voila, you've got, psychiatric symptoms. And he also had some neurological symptoms. He had double vision. And that was the symptom that made me think there's something else going on. I always wonder that had that symptom had not been there, I wonder if I would have accepted, oh, this is our family history. But it was the neurological symptom that made me search. He couldn't read anymore. This is a kid that was an avid reader that no longer could read. And so, like, something else has got to be going on in his brain. And so, thank God that he had that symptom because, and that was the last symptom actually to go away. So, with the change in his diet, with the change with the change in addressing his nutrition status, we also did, looked for gut pathogens and chronic gut pathogens, which he had many of. He was also severely constipated, had severe eczema. It was those two things that went away with treatment, with the initiation of the changes in diet first. And he felt better in his brain, better, but it didn't go away. It took a good 6 months to a year to have complete remission of his depression. And he was off of 2 medications by then. Happened so long ago that I might be off by a few months, but it took a good 2 years for the neurological symptom, the double vision, to go away. So much so that he did not get his driver's license until literally 2 years later. So because his vision did not improve until then. So yeah, that was the one that took the longest. And but yeah, he was off of all medications by 2 years. And that's because he hadn't been on them very long. And so some people, when I say that, like, assume that I don't want everyone to like change their diet and stop their medications. So don't assume that that's the right thing for you. You absolutely should be working with a provider to make sure that this is the right thing for you, and how to transition off medications, when to transition off medications, even if that's the right decision, because some people really shouldn't come off medications, and there's a variety of reasons, and that's a topic for another time. But that's basically my story. So once you see the power of functional medicine, you just can't go back.
No.
You cannot go back. You absolutely cannot. So everything changed for me in the way I practice. I became a provider in functional medicine. I'm IFMCP certified, and certified through the Institute for Functional Medicine. For people who don't know that, it's a big organization that trains people. And I was fortunate enough to be hired by the doctor who took care of my son, and a gem of a practice that unfortunately is no longer present, Visions Healthcare. And then I started my own practice in Rhode Island, Functional Mind. I have a partner, Sally Davidson, and we just moved to Providence from East Providence. So yeah, that's all I do. I do functional medicine for the brain and for emotions. And I still practice conventional medicine too, for the people who absolutely need that. And they want to do functional medicine, but no, so I see conventional medicines as being really good for acute care, in the same way that there's benefit in surgery and antibiotics. Like, there's a place for them. But from when it comes to chronic disease, you really need the functional medicine approach. So you can take medications, but then try to figure out what are the root causes of the symptoms that manifested. And then as you address those root causes and take them away, then ultimately you feel so well that it wasn't the medication that not necessarily got you there. It's a matter of then tapering the medications again, if it's the right thing for you, and seeing how you do.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for sharing that personal story with us. I think it's, and I had a similar thing with my son, kind of how when the puberty onset, then just sort of a whole cascade of different health issues going on, and and then he got up to no good, and took a while to straighten him out. We're still kind of working on it, but it's like, let's look at the biochemical side of things. And conventional medicine wants to throw pills at it, and similar diagnosis with ADHD and his sleep and all sorts of things. And he was low in B vitamins and zinc, and once we started to work on those, lo and behold, the mood, because he just became like, he's very, very smart, but he just became the most argumentative person. Like, he literally could not get out of an argument. He was so like ingrained in his thinking, and now he's back to the kind of the easygoing guy that he always was. But yeah, it was a number of years of complete and utter insanity over here. So yeah, but without knowing the functional side of things, you would just be, because I have many people that just, just gave the medication, and that, as you say, it's like sometimes it can be beneficial, other times, but without looking at the other, like the root cause of what's going on, it's just a band-aid. Similar,
Right.
similar with all the other stuff, with thyroid, bioidenticals, all the stuff we do for fertility. And so, yeah, so many people on the fertility journey, there can be situational depression given the diagnosis. Like we're working with people that have been told, premature ovarian insufficiency, diminished ovarian reserve, potentially have gone through multiple failed IVFs, being told that, donor eggs are their only option. So depression around that, and also anxiety as well, kind of swinging back and forth. And also, when we ask them, how long is the mood piece going on? Is it situational? Many times people will say, well, you know what, in my teens or my early 20s, this kind of came on. I had anxiety, I had depression. So we're going to talk about depression today, but like, let's go, like, what are the stats telling us around, like, I think it's anxiety is the most common. It's impacting like 18% of the US population, and major depression impacts over 6% of the US population. And sometimes they go hand in hand. Like, what kind of stats are you seeing around depression? And yeah, how many people are affected? Like, I feel like this mental health crisis it is a crisis, right? Now it just seems you've got issues dealing with life. You go to the doctor, the GP, typically, not even a specialist, and they're going to hand you medication. So what are you seeing in your practice, and some stats, I guess, around that?
Well, it's interesting, even though my practice, me being a psychiatrist and, my practice called functional mind, we started out as being, focusing on mental health and neurological issues. Not everyone who sees me has any mental illness. So, because they understand that, they understand that, uh, we focus on root causes and that bringing the whole body into balance can resolve lots of issues, not just depression and anxiety. So, a lot of times when people come to see us for their primary problem of depression and anxiety, then and they see that so many other issues also get better, and they see how the dots are connected, how the brain is connected to the body and vice versa. And so it's important to see that it's all connected. And so when you talk about depression, like, what if it's not depression? Like, what if
Yeah.
depression, so, statistically, depression, the symptom of depression is seen in anybody who's sick. Anyone with chronic disease is going to have some form of depression or anxiety. If you've had the flu or if you had a virus, it's going to affect your brain, and you're going to feel down in the dumps or depressed to some degree, because it's just part of a sickness syndrome. So when people are given a diagnosis of depression, where you have, five of there's the DSM, diagnostic statistical manual, that is put out in order to give different diagnoses of depression. There's different kinds of depression. It's not clear to me personally when they say this many people have depression. What do they really mean? Is it major depression, or is it just, are you feeling depressed? Like, how many symptoms do they have? So a true major depression is the feeling of being depressed and or the feeling of not having pleasure in your life. And it's accompanied with every day, most of the day, of a problem with your sleep, with your appetite, with your weight, with concentration, whether or not you're restless or like a couch potato, whether or not your mind is playing tricks on you, or if you're starting to feel chronic feelings of guilt or suicidality. So you have to have a number of those symptoms in order for it to meet the criterion. It has to be intense enough and long enough to be able to give that diagnosis. So I never know how much to trust some of these statistics, because I don't know what people have been asked, right? What have they actually been asked? And are they even asking them if they have chronic disease, right? So there's so many things that can contribute to depression. There's not just the psychological and the social aspects. There's the biological, but there's also the physiological and the functional. So they're not asking all the reasons as to why they're depressed, right? And some people say that they're depressed when they're actually anxious. And
Yeah.
so I think it's a very, you know, when I look, yes, there's a lot going on, right? There's a lot of people who aren't feeling well and are and say that they're depressed. As I said in my book, there's a whole bunch of terms that you could use other than the word depressed. Sometimes people say they're depressed when they're just unhappy, and that's really not the same thing. It's not the same thing. So that word is kind of thrown around very loosely to mean so many different things. And so, first couple chapters of my book actually goes into that. Like, what is it? What is depression, and what does it really mean? And there's a whole spectrum, right? So that's a long answer to a very simple question. I'm sorry.
No, it's yeah,
Yeah.
because it's more complex, right? We're like they're not asking the right questions of what exactly it is. And I guess in this situation where we see a lot of mood issues, because it can be very traumatic, right? Being on the fertility journey, saying that you're going to need IVF or IUI, being told, donor eggs. So like the situational piece of that. But then if we're looking at the person that says to us they've had mood issues all along, like those are huge clues to why it's not working in the first place.
Right.
And so before we get to that, so let's kind of like, so if you are someone dealing with like the situational piece of the depression, like any tips for that? For a person going through a traumatic event, which, when you're on the fertility journey, if you're viewing it that way, it could be considered that. Can you maybe talk a little bit around that?
Sure, sure. I mean, obviously, if you've been told that you are not able to get pregnant for a variety of reasons that apparently are physical, and that they're telling you to do other things, there's going to be that's grief reaction, right? And then so you have all of these dreams that you might have for the future suddenly gone, right? That is harsh. That's very, very harsh. And so to me, it's a grief reaction. And so it is a matter of taking care of yourself, processing that. And I think it's important, always important to get a second opinion and maybe a third opinion. And so hopefully you're the second opinion or the third opinion by that time, because many people aren't aware of the holistic, natural, or functional approach. And so it's important to learn about those things. Like before we started talking and recording this, we were
Yeah.
talking about hormone signaling. Like that's a new thing that we're just learning about, hormone signaling. So if all your hormones are fine, but your body's not functioning, your organs are not talking to each other. And so there's a treatment for that. But so that's why there's always hope. And I think it's important to never give up and understand that there's always hope, and to keep searching for answers. Certainly, if you start getting information, that, and I don't know the terminology in your world, but yeah, there really isn't, and you've tried everything, then it's another process of grief. But hopefully that isn't the case. But what to do with those feelings is to acknowledge those feelings, to breathe through them, just to acknowledge them and breathe through them, and allow for your body to feel them, and cry if you need to. Get the comfort that you need to nurture yourself, take care of yourself, connect with other people. It's being with other people and talking it through these feelings, but allow your feelings to be there. Certainly acknowledge and validate those feelings. And then the other thing is that sometimes when you have this reaction, I mean, some people's reactions are probably going to be worse than others, right? Like some will like, okay, we're moving on to the next. What's next? Like it's like I'm going on, and there's other people
That's
like, oh
me.
my God, it's the end of the world, right? And so why is that? Well, partly it's temperament, partly is your own experiences. So if you've had a life that has had multiple disappointments, right? No matter what you do, like it never goes my way. Why does this always happen to me? That kind of mindset. Then you have to sort of ask yourself, does this remind me? Does this situation that I'm experiencing remind me of other situations that have happened in the past? And do I see a pattern here?
Mhm.
Because then that might explain why it's such a maybe intense reaction, because you're not only reacting to the current situation, you're continuing to react to the whole string of other situations. And so, what you'll want to do is notice the pattern, one, okay? And two, you want to think about what was the first situation. And believe it or not, if you can breathe into that first situation, this is something, it's so easy for me to say, and to actually practically do this, you actually need a practitioner to help you with this. And what I'm talking about is something called internal family systems and parts. It's all parts therapy, and there's some great videos online that can teach you about that. Richard Schwartz talked about parts therapy, and there's a book that he recently wrote called No Bad Parts. Excellent book. And it's a series of books that he's written, and he's the one who invented internal family systems. And so what you'll want to do is go back to the very first memory, as far back as you can go, and of this feeling that you had. And if you allow for yourself to just open your mind and emotionally think about that. It's not just cognitively thinking about it, it's connecting to the emotions and going back to that first episode. And then sort of opening that memory and thinking about it, what happened around that time, how did it make you feel? And perhaps even thinking about other episodes, so looking for patterns and then seeing how you reacted to those times. And a lot of times children react to certain things because they don't have control of the situation. They're children, right? And they depend on adults to take care of them. And so many times children blame themselves for a situation, right? And then they put it on themselves to fix the situation, even though they have no power to, right? But they make it their job to fix the situation, or they, like I said, they blame themselves. And so then there's a reaction for that. So it's undoing that kind of stuff, those dynamics. And so if you can work on those issues, it's kind of a ripple effect. It's a domino effect. It goes right up to the present time. And you kind of just calm down about it, and you become a little bit more practical and reasonable in your ability to handle the current situation. So it's work. I mean, what I'm saying is work to do. It's not an easy thing the way I just said it in 5 minutes, but it works. And it's different from psychotherapy. Psychotherapy, in my opinion, and I'm a psychotherapist, and I've been doing it for years. You're just kind of talking about things. You're
Mhm.
not necessarily connecting to the emotions. You might feel emotions, but those are more reactions as opposed to what's underneath that's driving all of this, that's driving all the angst and fear and guilt and, shame, even. So, what's under all of that and where did it start? And looking for patterns. Those are the keys to sort of getting at that. So, I know that was a very long answer.
No, it's good. Those unconscious pattern, we don't even know, right? You're an automatic pilot, you're doing the same thing and you're just reliving something that's happened, years ago. So to be able to look at that and to, first of all, to observe it, because sometimes we don't know it's even there. Um,
Absolutely. Mhm.
and so we're on the fertility journey. We already had a diagnosis of depression, and we're on antidepressants. And here we are. Maybe we've had some failed IVFs. Um, and so we're doing functional lab testing, stool and genetics and more,
Mhm.
digging into all of this, right? So from your lens, where would you start with someone like that?
Well, you know, in wow, that's a tough
A
question.
lot, yeah.
So I think it depends on the person and just what their history is. The first thing that I would want to know is this medication necessary?
Hmm.
Is the medication given for the proper reasons? How long have they been on the medication? How high is the dose? And what is the person's uh, need and or desire to stay on the medication, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I would imagine that most people would want to, be pregnant without having that medication or any medication on board, right?
Mhm.
So, the literature shows that SSRIs are safe, but, I would imagine that most people would prefer not having any medication on board during the pregnancy, which is why people stop quitting smoking and stop all sorts of things, right? And certainly there are a list of medications where absolutely you have to come off medication, right? So, number one, if the person does want to come off medication, is that the right thing to do? Do the benefits outweigh the risks to come off the medication? Okay. So, if a person has a history of, being so depressed that they can't function, they've had multiple psychiatric hospitalizations, have had psychosis, had made suicide attempts, no, you need to stay on medication,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so that's one extreme. The other extreme is, oh, I was given medication because I broke up with my boyfriend and now I'm with a new guy. And, I was over that within a few months and I just never stopped taking the medication. And it's a low dose, like 10 milligrams of Prozac, then yeah, then you're probably better off coming off that medication. So so moodiness, I would probably do further questioning just to understand more about their current state of mind, where they are with that. Are they in therapy? Do they have supports? So the thing is that people don't know is that the medication should always be tapered
Right.
to prevent an antidepressant withdrawal syndrome. And there is no one right way to do that. It should be tapered very slowly. And if you have any withdrawal symptoms, whether it's headaches, brain zaps, sensitivities of all sorts, there's a whole list of withdrawal symptoms that people can potentially have. Is that to not tough it out. You go back up and stay on the higher dose longer and try it again, bringing it down. And so some of these medications, unfortunately, have to be cut in little pieces, the tablets, and diluted or however titrated very, very slowly. So, the lowest dose of Prozac, you would, I think it's 10 milligrams now. They may have a 5 milligram out, but there's also a liquid Prozac where you would want to titrate it even lower, like 9, 8, 7, 6. And the lower you go, the slower you want to do that. So but anyway, those are some considerations, and certainly, with the work that you're doing to prepare for a person to get pregnant. I don't know how long that gap is, right? But you're doing nutrition. A lot of those things improve the mood. Absolutely, right? A lot of those things improve the mood. So, foods, infections, toxins, stress, all of which affect your hormones, right? And so, I find that when my patients do those all of the things that in restoring the gut, which is removing what's causing inflammation, replacing what's missing, all the nutrients, phytonutrients, healthy fats, healthy protein, removing the sugar and flavors and additives, and re-inoculating the gut microbiome and repairing the gut lining, all of that helps your mood. So whether you do that first and then taper the medications, which actually people taper off medications much more smoothly once they've done the gut restoration. And so some people might choose to get pregnant while they're on it, might not. It's up to the individual to really look at the literature and decide what's right for them and go from there.
Yeah, it's really interesting on this because we talked to so many people that are on like Zoloft, and then they're also on like all kinds of different sleep aids, like benzos and all sorts of things because they can't. Yeah, been on it for years and years, and sort of when they went on it, it was a situational thing going on when I was speaking to them. So it is, yeah, and doing all that, the gut work, removing the toxins, the good nutrients. It's all the stuff we do here, and and we see it all the time. And the mood improves. And I'm seeing it from from the other side of things, where in conventional medicine, you're on this medication, and then, hey, let's do the IVF, and then you're pumping your body full of hormones, and you're on all this, medication, but you haven't got to the underlying issue as to why it's not working. And many times people are put on birth control, which then, anxiety and depression from that, they've been on that for years, and the cycle. Yeah, what's your take on like, what are you seeing around birth control with moods? I think people don't even realize that's impacting their mood.
Oh, absolutely. It can cause severe mood changes. It can cause migraines. Absolutely. Many people get depressed and anxious from birth control pills. Yeah, I don't recommend them. But unfortunately, sometimes that's the only solution for specific things. So I think it's a matter of looking at all your options, doing your research and knowing what's out there so that you can make an informed decision about what to take. So sometimes birth control pills is the only option, just like sometimes the antidepressant is the only option and the most necessary, depending on the acuity of the symptoms and the severity of the symptoms and what else they've tried. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right that just going through IVF it can really, really cause you to be on this roller coaster of mood swings, and even psychosis. So it's not just depression or anxiety. There's psychosis as well. But there are ways to manage those things, and there are supplements that are friendly, in terms of taking with medications. Again, it's best to work with a provider that understands, the different supplements. But in terms of getting the benzodiazepines, are really important to taper and discontinue. In terms if you're going to try to get pregnant, and there are things that you can take to help you sleep, L-theanine, pharmagaba, GABA. There is glycine, there's magnesium, 5-HTP, a low dose of that, but that does interact with SSRI. So I wouldn't necessarily put that on board if they're already taking medication. So 5-HTP is only if you want to improve your sleep and you're not taking any other medications. But there's a whole host of things that you can take to improve sleep, and many herbs can help with mood as well as hormones, right? So it's a matter of finding the root causes and then helping address the nutrition piece. Vitamins, so many vitamins can help with mood and anxiety. But those are a handful of things that people can try. OCD type symptoms, inositol is really helpful, and that helps with sleep as well. Anxiety, sleep, and OCD like symptoms is inositol. So yeah, and I think it's a matter of finding someone who understands how to use these supplements and whether or not they interact with medications. And they also, these supplements that I just mentioned also do help with tapering off of medications too.
Yeah, DIYing this is just going to lead to confusion, some
Right.
interactions, problems. Like, we don't want to be messing around with this, right? So it is
Right.
important to have a guide to really help you along the way. And then and then having someone, obviously you need to work with someone if you're going to taper off of these as you prepare for pregnancy success. Any other themes that you see around with someone that is dealing with depression? Like, what are your kind of themes that you typically see
Um,
from a functional standpoint? Because this is looking at it completely differently. Like, theme, like typically in conventional medicine, they're going to be like, get a therapist and work on your issues, but maybe it's a biochemical thing, right?
right. Well, yeah. I mean, so your microbiome, having a dysbiosis in your microbiome being imbalanced, it's your gut microbiome that makes the neurotransmitters that your brain needs. But you also want to make sure that you're providing your body the right foods. So protein, it's amino acids that come together to make serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrine and all of the different neurotransmitters. So you do need to have protein, and you need to be able to digest that protein. So making sure that you're releasing hydrochloric acid and pancreatic enzymes and bile salts again. So, and eating the right foods, believe it or not, all of that gets, broken down to little bits, and then your microbiome packages it differently in the way that your body needs it. So your microbiome, most people have digestive issues that I know. Most people have leaky gut or increased gut permeability. So addressing those issues will absolutely, and those ultimately lead to an autoimmune disease. Especially if you eat, have gluten. So gluten and dairy can absolutely cause depression and anxiety. So removing those things, and so the three things that create an autoimmune process is genetic vulnerability, having gluten, and increased gut permeability. The combination of those three things can cause an autoimmune disease. Lupus is, out of all of the autoimmune diseases, lupus is a major cause of depression. So, so other themes, stress. So some people don't recognize how much stress they are under from an external standpoint, but stress internally, internal stress, you might be happy, but your body's not happy. So the people who are go, 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 and looking back and saying, how come you're not keeping up, body? Right? What do you mean you need sleep? What do you mean you need to eat? Right? That's extremely stressful. Right. And so not recognizing stress, I think that's the hardest thing of all my patients, the hardest thing for people to manage, because it does take time to learn how to breathe, to learn how to calm your mind and meditate, to actually even the thought of doing that, right? It's just like, I don't even know what that means. Like, it's like being like, how do you know what it means to be out on the moon, right? You have no idea. So there are people who've never tried it, and the only thing you can do is just start, just little steps, baby steps, and getting those habits in place. Um, and so, we look at rhythms, really being aware of the body. The body keeps the score. Bessel van der Kolk, I always mess up his name, wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's really, connecting the brain to the body, and being more aware and listening to your body, paying attention and listening, talking to your body, right? Connecting those dots. So body awareness, nourishing the body, and appreciating your body, and not getting angry or upset with your body for not functioning. And so it's telling you, it's trying to talk to you, and you have to start listening. So those are some themes that I do besides a full gut restoration. That basically is foundational, in my practice. There are things that, I find that sometimes people are found to have Lyme disease that wasn't picked up, or co-infections. There's viruses, mold toxicity, mold illness, people living in moldy homes or workplaces, and not really, again, it's a matter of connecting the dots. Why do I feel the way I feel? And a hallmark of mold is like every time you go on vacation you feel great. Well, it's not, because it might be because you're not as stressed, but maybe it's because you're not in that environment anymore. You kind of have to connect the dots in that way. Have this awareness. And so it is being a bit of a detective, and increasing your awareness and being curious, and just putting the pieces of the puzzle together, right?
Yeah, I think it's important, so important about the stress piece too, where like I ask people, where are you on the stress, 1 to 10, they're literally 8, 9, 10 of just like, and then chronic stress, dealing with this for years. And then it might be like, and we work with somebody like type A's, like just get it done, and don't even realize that, yeah, you're still going. And that was me. I'm like, I'm totally fine. I get tons of energy. Keep go. Well, then the body's like, yeah, no, I don't think so. And started getting all these infections, and, and the body took a nosedive. And and then had to make these changes, right? So, and if you're on the fertility journey, the body's telling you, wait, hold on, there's something going on, right? You're deprioritizing your reproductive health.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like you said, those that the loss of trust in the body, where we could be angry, we could feel it's broken, and all this sort of, why is this not working? That is seemingly so easy for others, and we're feeling, and so there's like a lot of anger directed towards our body, perhaps, and it can be that can be really difficult.
Yeah, and that's where parts therapy comes in, because there's parts of you that are trying to warn you that that there's danger. And so I think the key question to ask yourself, or for your clients, patients to ask yourself themselves, is, do I feel safe? Right? And when was the last time I felt safe? Right? When was the last time I felt safe? So people who have any history of childhood trauma, that might be what's coming up. That's the other thing, is that when people have childhood trauma and then they are now having children, a lot of emotions come up about that, because if they've been traumatized as a child, they think, why didn't my parents love me? Or, why do they treat me this way? I mean, if it's a parent, that, why didn't they protect me? And then you start thinking, well, am I going to be the same way? Am I going to be a good parent? Am I like, so all of these thoughts come up, but a lot of times it's operating in the background and it's not in the foreground. So, and if anything that I'm saying, if people are listening, if listen to how that resonates with you, or if your ears are perking up, then that I might have hit a little bit of a nerve, that you might want to go down that road a little bit, but please do it with somebody who's trained and understands this. So you might need to unpack that with someone, because that might be enough, believe it or not, to not get you pregnant, right?
Mhm.
If you don't feel it's safe to bring a child into the world, I mean, you might cognitively say, dismiss that part of you, that emotional part of you. It's like, of course it's safe. I've got money. I've got a job. I'm away from my toxic family. I don't need to worry about that. That you might say that cognitively, but on an emotional level, there might be a part of you saying, warning, 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 and so you have to listen to that part of you. And that's where parts therapy comes in. It's talking to that child part, saying, hey, you're safe now. That 4-year-old part of you is safe now. I'm 34 now, I'm not 4. And so it is, so there's a method to this, to sort of calm those parts of you and let them know that they are safe, and that yes, it is safe to bring a child in. And I'm going to be different because I'm a different person. They might have been, whoever were the perpetrators might have been your parents, and or an uncle or an aunt or a grand, whoever it was, but I am not that person. I'm a different person, and I have that those experiences have molded me into the person that I am, and I'm going to break that cycle. So you can make those conscious decisions and know that you're in control of yourself, right? And if you think you're not, then get some help, right? So yeah, I think so it's important and that, I think that's a piece, that's a question that most functional medicine providers may not ask, that it may come from a trauma, a trauma expert therapist, or a psychiatrist, a functional psychiatrist. But that's a question that I do ask my patients. Do you feel safe?
It is a really important question, right? Because I think, yeah, when you may think you've got everything around you that to make you safe, but deep down there's something that's, and then with that, is there self-sabotage? Is there something that then you're not going to do what you need to do, or you find yourself just, yeah, doing things that aren't serving you, because you just don't believe it's safe, which is, yeah. And we see that too even with the hope piece, right? Where you've been through so many IVFs, it hasn't worked. And the hope could be like on a roller coaster, like all day long, like kind of like this, or all,
Mhm.
month long. And then the cycle comes again and we're hopeful, and then crashes down. And so it's this very, like, a lot of strong emotions on here, being able to
Right.
navigate it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think people have to be in a place of surrendering to the process and not trying to control it.
Mhm.
And taking what you get, just taking what you get and go with that. And then if you approach it that way, your body calms down, because then you're saying, okay, well, if I get pregnant, great. And if I don't get pregnant, great. I mean, we'll just go to plan B, you don't have to put all your eggs in one basket and have so much agitation and angst and control, control, control. We got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. So there's this desperation around it.
Mhm.
Excuse me. There's this desperation around it that actually can interfere in your ability to get pregnant, right?
Absolutely. I know, and the fertility industry perpetuates this, that you're too old, your eggs are too old, you better run right now, you're running out of time. And then it just, this panic, which is the absolute opposite of knowing your body, being able to know it's safe. So,
Right.
yeah. And so you are offering a free download of your book.
Mhm.
So it's the first three chapters of the book. So and we'll have a link in there. And so what can they expect there in those chapters?
Well, I mean, it's just a sort of a taste of what I talk about and do in my practice. We covered a lot of it in snippets. So but yeah, it's basically an introduction to the type of person that I see and the kinds of barriers that they come up against, and that there are other solutions. So it's I've been told that I've actually had people read my book and follow the guidance in the book, and get well from the depression and anxiety. So it's a good book for everyone to read. Some people are going to need to work with a provider if it's more moderate to severe depression and anxiety, but if it's mild, and if you're not on medications, or if you've just been getting into that route of taking medication, start on a medication, this is a great place to start in terms of not only improving your depression or anxiety, but really your whole body. It's a lifestyle and diet, book for approach, and restoring the gut. And it's something that you can honestly do on your own at home using this book. Yeah.
They can go to Achina Stein Do, so ACHINASTEINDO.com / book. We'll have it in the show notes. And this is like looking at your mental health diagnosis in an entirely different light. Like literally, you are not powerless. There's things you can do. You're not doomed to feel this way your whole life. And like the title of the book, what if it's not depression, right? What if there's something else going on? And I don't know. To me, this approach is, why doesn't everybody know about it, right? There's a huge conversation right now about mental health, but we're looking at the wrong thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yes. And it's apropos because it is Mental Health Month.
Okay, yeah, yeah. And so do you have any final thoughts on our topic today, Achina?
Yeah. I mean, I just want people to know that there are lots of other options. There's so much in your control, believe it or not. And it's not the end of the world. And your genes are not your destiny. There's so many things that you can do to flip those bad genes off and flip the good genes on. And that is really through diet and lifestyle. And, we didn't talk about my journey, but after my son got well, I started looking at myself, and I had Hashimoto's. Uh,
Ah,
I had all sorts of gut issues. I had allergies to the point of needing 5 medications. And I feel 20 years younger. So, and I'm 60 years old.
you
So,
look fabulous. Yeah.
I turned 60 this year. So, yeah, I mean, and functional medicine does more than just, save your brain. It really, really saves your whole body. And people, feel younger from this whole process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
Absolutely.
a ripple effect of those around us, right? We make the changes. People are like, "What are you doing?" And next thing you know, you've sort of changed your whole entire community. So thanks again for coming on, and awesome, thank you.
Thank you.